Yes. So chop on it. Sorry.
Yeah, go.
Just do your face, man.
Go.
Where's Mansour? Where's Mansour? Where's Mansour? Where's Mansour? Okay, all right. Yo, you're looking sharp, bruv. You look.
I'd love to invite you to my show, by the way. Podcast.
Yeah?
Would you like to come on?
Yeah, why not, bro? You're looking smart, brother.
Thank you.
Are you married?
About 2 whole
You need to get married as soon as possible. It's too much fitna in the park. We'll talk, inshallah. Inshallah. Okay. Yes. Do you mind being on camera or off camera? Okay, he doesn't mind being on camera. So do you want to stand here?
Okay, stand
Yeah. What's your name? Michael. Nice meeting you, Michael. My name's Ali. All right. Close, yeah? Okay. All right, no problem.
one step closer.
Okay, it's getting a bit, okay, all right. Just zoom out a bit, bruv. You're too close.
You look too far away.
Okay. All right, assalamu alaikum, guys. So we are here with Michael. We spoke to Sister C, who's your friend. So you're an ex-Christian, now an atheist. Atheist or agnostic?
All right, cool. So I like this question because I like to clarify that with atheism and agnosticism, they're not mutually exclusive. So when people say that they're atheists, you have people who are more gnostically atheists, where they definitively believe that God doesn't exist, or you have the latter part of the definition, which is the doubt of existence. So I lean more towards the agnostic side. I don't think it would be intellectually honest for me to say definitively 100% that I know God doesn't exist. But effectively, how I live my life is on an atheist level, because I don't act as if I believe God exists.
Okay, interesting. So you don't totally deny God, neither do you fully accept it. Would that be correct?
Yeah. Well,
Or are you more on the he doesn't exist side more?
Yeah. If I was a betting man,
You would.
I would need to.
Okay. So Michael, would you say that Christianity played a role? Because usually what happens is the following. Christians think, and ex-Christians, they tend to think every religion is like Christianity. So what they do is they close the door to all religions.
Right.
So sometimes what we say is that, I'm not saying with your case it might be that or it might not be. Huh?
I can answer that.
Please, yeah, can you tell
So
me?
my background is, I actually grew up in a very Abrahamic household. So although both my parents were Christian,
Yeah.
my dad was very pluralistic. He was well educated in theology.
Okay, interesting.
So he would introduce me to like imams, rabbis, people. He would always encourage me to learn about things. We even come downstairs in the morning.
Yeah.
He would teach you about everything.
Okay.
So I was young at the time. I wouldn't know everything in detail
Yeah.
to level.
Okay.
He passed away when I was young.
Okay.
So I didn't get to. So from that teaching, that more pluralistic bent of being open-minded to various different faiths, even outside the Abrahamic family.
Yes.
I researched. From very early on, I was very doubtful of Christianity before I hit my teens. So
What was the doubt coming from in Christianity? So what was the main factors in Christianity that made you think I'm better atheist agnostic than being a Christian?
it wasn't even really Christianity particularly. It was the more fundamental point about God's existence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was mainly God's existence.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the concept of Trinity? None of that. It was just mainly does God exist?
Those things also were additive, but for the most part, I like to look at the fundamental sort of foundational beliefs.
Okay.
So to me, the foundational belief is God exists.
Okay.
That's the first axiom.
Okay. Should we start with that?
Yeah.
So like, if I can prove to you that God exists, would you accept it?
Yeah, well, I base things on empirical basis.
Yeah.
So for me, just to also clarify my position, one thing that I realized very early on is I was highly doubtful of the sort of dualistic aspect of reality. So having like a spiritual and a physical. To me, I'm a monolith, so I think everything is the same. Everything is physical.
So are you an empiricist? Do you believe that everything, the truths that we have are our five senses and nothing, like, is that your truth?
I utilize empirical thought, but I'm not. I would say I'm not open to other sort of.
So do you accept that there are truths outside our five senses?
Well, I mean, we don't just perceive things through our five senses.
Exactly.
So I think, but all those other perceptual experiences or tools are also physically based. I doubt, or I haven't presented enough evidence to make that the other. Because when people exclaim that there's something beyond the physical, to me that's a positive claim, and the burden of proof is for them to explain why that is.
Okay.
I understand intuitively why people think things are sort of dualistic, because obviously there's different degrees of tangibleness, right? There's certain things that camera I can physically touch, I can hold. If we talk about mathematics, it's
abstract.
right? So people will say like tangibility-wise. But as we start to understand the physical world better, we understand the complexity. So for example, when me and you have a mathematical conversation,
Yes.
we know that neurologically speaking, there's a physical process that allows us to have that experience.
Yes.
And so that's the physical basis in which
Yes.
it's happening. But because it's something that we intuitively grasp without being taught or educated on it, we more so lean to that. Sometimes it's more easier to say, oh, this is something beyond the physical type of thing.
Okay, so would you say then you do incline that there are evidences outside the five senses?
Yeah. I mean, we don't
Okay.
just use the five senses alone.
Like for example, dark matter.
Yeah.
Dark matter we cannot touch, feel, taste, smell, or
We
feel.
use that matter
Or hear.
there, yeah.
So, but we do accept dark matter is there.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're inclined to believe that that's more like the case.
Exactly. But you haven't seen it.
Well, I haven't seen it.
We haven't seen it.
Yeah, we can deduce it's there though. There's a lot of experience.
Exactly. But we haven't seen it. We haven't touched it. We haven't felt it, smelt it, or heard it. Is that correct?
With our five senses, no.
No. But we deduce that it exists. Okay. Now, the same thing can be said about God Almighty. We cannot see, touch, feel, taste, smell. But we deduce and see certain things that allow us to come to conclusions that there has to be a higher power. So let me start off with, I have two arguments. I'm going to go with the contingency argument because I think you're smart enough to maybe, I'm sure you'll grasp it. So now there are three types of existence. There is impossible existence, there is possible existence, and there is necessary existence. Yeah? Now, impossible existence is, can we have a triangle circle? So that's an impossible existence. So we are left with two options. A possible existence and a necessary existence, right? So now, possible existence are things that are contingent within our universe. So I'm a contingent being. Means I'm dependent. I am dependent on other factors for my survival.
Could be otherwise. Yeah.
I could be otherwise. I could have been otherwise. Our planet that we live in is dependent on other external factors for its survival. The sun, etc., 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 for its survival. Yeah, the gravitational force. Our galaxy is dependent on our universe, right? For its existence.
Okay, I'm following.
Yep, and our universe is dependent, I would say, on other factors. Like, if we had, there's billions of galaxies. If we took away 5 billion galaxies, is that still the same universe? No, it's a different universe. So what I'm trying to say is the following. We cannot have an infinite regress of dependent things. So I repeat again. There are things that are dependent, can be any other way, yes, and are composed of pieces. We say that it's a logical fallacy to have an infinite regress of dependent things. So I'll repeat again. It's a logical fallacy that we can have an infinite regress of dependent things. I rely on water and sun. The sun relies on this. Then that relies on that. If it goes in infinitely, you cannot have what we have now. So we require a necessary being which is independent and self-sufficient, and it's not composed of pieces. So what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is that this necessary being is what has given rise to everything within the universe and everything that we know.
This is only mine.
Nah, so I know about this. So this is somewhat similar to sort of like the first mover syndrome.
Prime
It's
mover
some
kind of.
prime mover
Yeah,
type
yeah, kind of.
So
Yeah.
the thing is, even the prime mover argument doesn't properly address the infinite universe.
This is similar to that. It's not that.
It's not this. I know,
Yeah.
but like even with what you're talking about, like necessary conditions and God being a necessary,
It has to be necessary.
has to be.
Cannot be
necessary.
any other way. And it is independent and self-sufficient.
Right, but for the axiom of that being the case, right, they're following features of said God as explained by most, if not all, religious religions. Do not necessarily follow. So, for
How?
example, if you're just saying on a logical standpoint, there's sort of like a necessary self-sufficient expressive being.
Yeah.
Those characteristics
Yeah.
are alone, someone could agree with. Where you have disagreements is when people start to add attributes.
We're going to personify it is after. What I do is I'm trying to get to the first step, which is, does a necessary being exist? Let me make it simpler. The universe. Is our universe dependent or independent?
Is our universe dependent?
Is it dependent or independent?
because I guess for me, I would have to. That's where my agnosticism comes in.
10 minutes, bro.
I don't definitively know all the aspects of our universe.
All right.
So that's why I rest on my agnosticism, where I say, okay, right now, I've seen other arguments, explanations.
Yeah.
These theories here seem to be the strongest, say, for example, Big Bang Theory, etc.
Yeah.
To explain it. But I know that there's falsifiability with these theories.
Okay.
So there could be a better explanation to come along.
So the argument that I'm to debunk all of those. Big Bang Theory goes aligned with the theistic argument because it says that the universe was at one point singular and something gave rise to it, yeah? So what I'm saying is our universe is very simple. It's either dependent or independent. So either our universe depends on something else for its existence or our universe is independent. Logically, I mean, it's one of the two. It's not like a trick question.
I know it's not.
It's basically.
I'm even thinking of even more meta-wise. Is that even a dichotomy that we work with? But even if we work with that dichotomy, I would lean towards it being an independent thing. I would lean towards it being an independent thing in that case.
Okay. So if we say the universe is independent, then remember I said to you there is dependent things and there's independent things. So what you've done now is you've accepted that an independent being is required.
Why would it be a being?
Independent. Okay. Why? Which I will come to later. Yeah. Because the being has to, for example, why is there something rather than nothing? So that independent thing has to have the willpower to will something. Now the universe doesn't have those properties. So when you say the universe is independent, what you've done in a nutshell is accepted something that's independent. All you've done is ascribe it to the universe rather than the creator.
Because technically the universe does have beings that have it within the universe.
It doesn't.
The universe is just an amalgamation of all things that exist.
No, exactly. But the universe, what did we say? A dependent thing is what? Something that's composed of pieces. The universe is composed of pieces. So how could it be independent?
Composed of pieces.
Remember I said to you,
Okay.
dependent things are things that rely on something else for their existence. They are composed of pieces and they could be any other way. Could our universe be any other way? Like 5 billion less galaxies or 5 billion extra galaxies?
Okay, so you're saying that you're going back to necessary.
Exactly.
contingent,
So
right? But
sorry.
even for the universe as it is now,
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, that's the universe that we have. So
Sorry?
for all intents and purposes, that's the universe that we know we have.
Yes.
All the universe, to me, at least on the definitional standpoint, like I said, it's just the amalgamation of all that we have. So even
What do you mean by amalgamation? What's the definition of that exactly? It's a mixture of.
no, it's like literally when someone says the universe, it's anything, all things that exist.
Exactly. But what I'm trying to say is my definition of a dependent thing was it depends on something else for its existence and it's composed of pieces and it could be any other way. Can our universe be any other way?
Yeah.
Of course. So therefore we cannot say it's independent because the independent being is self-sufficient, cannot be any other way and is not composed of pieces. And it doesn't rely on something else for its own existence. It's necessary. So when you said the universe is independent, you gave the attributes of a necessary being to the universe. So the reason why I'm kind of telling you why the universe cannot be independent is because it has the qualities of a dependent thing.
We're having sort of
Yeah.
is the point about the pieces.
Yes.
Because you're so
Pieces and it can be any other way.
and it can't be any other way. The contingent aspect, right?
Yeah, it can be any other way. A dependent thing can be any other way. I could have not exist. The universe could have not been here. It could have been something else. It could be 5 billion galaxies or trillion galaxies. It could have been any other way. And if it can be any other way, it's dependent. It's not independent.
Right.
That's my argument. I'm just.
That's your argument.
Yeah.
But even with, I think you can't really escape the contingent aspect when it comes to our universe.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point.
But even when it comes to the whole thing of the necessary, because
Yeah.
what I'm now thinking about is what would this necessarily be? Because obviously, if this being is necessary, why would it now be able to be able to produce things that are different contingencies?
Okay, so what I would say is before we come to that, if we can just come to some simple conclusion, basic understanding, is that firstly you ascribed independence to the universe. Then I said why it couldn't be independent because it's composed of pieces, it could be any other way, and it is dependent. So but I say those two things. So therefore, you accepted two things. Number one, you accepted that something independent is required. something necessary, and you ascribe it to the universe. So, which is a good point, which is a good start, because you're acknowledging we require something independent, but you believe that to be the universe. I brought two arguments which I said it cannot be independent because it's composed of pieces and it can be any other way, which makes it not independent but dependent. Now, if the universe is dependent because of those 2 points, what is it dependent on? Which we claim is the independent being that gave rise to it. Now, I can tell you why that's personal, but I'm saying, do you follow that? Do you accept this?
No, I guess I was still on the metaphysics.
Yeah. So I just trying to repeat it. Or,
No, so even if I
huh? What? Yeah, what about him? Okay. Okay.
Wrap up soon.
No, carry on.
So even if I step back a bit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it being contingent and it having components to it.
Yes, it's made of pieces. Yeah.
Right. So it would necessitate it being dependent on something else.
It has to be, yeah.
Now I have to think if that's a dichotomy I have to accept, because if something is contingent,
Yeah.
does it now necessitate? Why does it now necessitate that it has to have something?
It has to, because contingency in a nutshell means dependent. It's dependent on something else for its own existence. So what we say is, if the universe is composed of pieces and the universe can be any other way, it necessitates. Would you like water?
No, I'm good.
You sure?
Sure.
You sure? Okay, no problem. So the thing is, what we say is that necessitates that thing cannot be independent. It's disqualified of being independent, because the independent thing being is necessary. It's not dependent on anything. It's not composed of pieces, and it cannot be any other way.
Right, but then my thought is, because I'm not even thinking about the whole contingency thing. So what about contingency then follows that it has to be dependent on something else? Because even though something can be...
What is that? Say that again?
So even if something has contingency...
Has
why
what?
is even if something has contingency, say like the universe...
Yep.
Why does it then... I'm sorry, I couldn't completely...
No, please.
Why does it then follow that it has to be it has to be something dependent on something else? It's like, why does there have to be an underlying basis of necessity?
Well, it has to, because the definition of dependency is something that relies on something else for its existence, composed of parts, and it can be any other way. If something can be any other way, if I could have been not here, then it shows that I'm dependent. So if the universe or our planet can be any other way, then it shows that it's dependent within its nature. It has to.
But then I'm thinking...
Because how can it be independent if it can be any other way?
No,
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
But I'm thinking of this going further into ontology about this nature of existence.
Yeah.
So, to me, one thing I also kind of I'm hard pressed to argue against the idea of nothing exists. Like the idea
Exactly.
Like, there always has to be existence.
Exactly. So we say that has to be the necessary being.
But no, why does that have to? Okay, so I guess it's a semantic thing about the being aspect, because I guess you can expand the concept of being to something that's not anthropomorphized.
Exactly. We're gonna come to that. We don't believe this being is is made composed of pieces. We don't believe that. Yeah.
Right. But then okay, cool. So then I think you're saying a point similar to what I've heard from the rabbi before, which I guess a monotheistic. Which I actually lean to. I don't know if you are monolith, but there's sort of like a similar starting point with a monolith.
Okay.
Which is like you have this necessary existence.
Exactly. So that's what I'm trying to prove. A necessary existence.
Right. But and everything within that is just a part of that necessary existence.
No. God willed it, but He's not. What He willed, yes. For example, in the universe, the things they're dependent on Him. So that's the point I'm trying to make. Because if the universe is dependent, which I've proven, it requires the question this: what does it depend on? So this is where we say it has to depend on something that is independent. If it's dependent on something that's dependent, then that thing needs something that's independent. Otherwise, we have an infinite regress of dependent things. So if I said the universe depends on this, and you're like, well, okay, is that independent? I go, no, it's dependent. Well, okay, what does that depend on? That depends on A. Okay, what does A depend on? B. Okay, what does B depend on? C, D. If we go forever, you will never have the universe. That's why we say it requires an independent, self-sufficient being that is not composed of pieces and cannot be any other way. It necessitates that.
I'll be honest, I think you're what I'm skeptical of maybe I'm jumping a bit too anticipating too much. Is sort of some of these, and again, this is where my skepticism of anthropomizing.
Yes.
The idea of like this necessary being willing in X, Y, and Z.
Say that again, sorry.
This necessary being willing something to exist.
Okay, good. So now, if we can move past that dependent thing and accept that there's an independent thing, then I can tell you why it goes down the route of these attributes, because it then will necessitate that this being has to be personal. It has to require. I can go there, but first, can we accept that?
Yeah, let's follow that.
Okay, so what we say is then, if the universe is dependent. If it's dependent, it requires something independent to make sense and give rise to it. Therefore, now this independent thing. Once we accept that, you become a deist, not a theist. So it's deist. Okay, there's this thing there. But now I want to make it personal. Yes, meaning, do you agree that if the independent being is responsible for the dependent universe, that it must have give rise to it?
But what my thing is, I think there's a bit of a logical gap because first of all, I don't think it's a deistic point to say that there is some sort of necessary existence. Because I guess the idea of
you can accept a necessary being, the independent being, but you can be a deist. You can say, I don't believe it's personal. I believe that thing is just there. So you're at that stage at the moment.
No, because I'm even pushing back on the whole thing of it. Because one could say that whatever you're describing as a necessary starting point, it doesn't have to be a being. It's a necessary state for existence. For instance, because that's why I guess the semantics is important. Because when you say being, it implies some sort of like a willing thing,
a will,
X, Y, Z thing,
exactly.
Rather than what I would say is just the amalgamation of this existence. Just like the starting point, like you have existence.
Yes.
And that's the starting point.
Okay, but we accept, like, okay, you said we have a starting point. Good. Who started it?
Why is it? Why
it has to, because you know what? Let me tell you something. A blind process cannot give rise to something. When we talk about, you know why? Because you said you don't ever believe in nothingness. You believe that there was always something, right? Okay, I'm going with that. I'm going with the argument. When you say there's nothing, there's always something, then that something is either the universe, and what did we do? You said the universe is independent, meaning it was always there. Then I showed you why it cannot be independent and it's dependent. Then from there we said if it's dependent, it requires something independent to give rise to it.
But I think even when we have that logic of the dependent thing, I think it becomes an interesting matter, because if I say that necessary thing is just the universe, and we have a contingent universe.
But you said that, and that's why you said the universe is independent. And then I said why it cannot be independent. I gave you the characteristics of a dependent thing, and we ascribed it to the universe, and we said it's composed of pieces, and it could be any other way. Therefore, it doesn't qualify to be independent. Now, when you said you believe there's no nothingness, there's always something, I agree with you. What we say is that is the necessary being that always existed and gave rise to the universe. Now, what I'm saying the following is the jump that I'm making is the following. If it gave rise to the dependent universe, that requires a will. It has to will it. It can't, the universe, how did the universe come to be? Did the independent being will it, or the universe just said, no, I decide to come to being? Which one makes more logical sense?
Why are we even using language of deciding or willing? Why?
But it has to, because the thing is, if the universe is dependent and it requires an independent thing to give rise to it, if it relies on the independent thing, then there has to be a will. There has to.
I think for me, the reason why I'm skeptical is I think we're slipping into anthropomorphizing physical.
No, I'm not doing that.
I know that's what you think you're doing.
Yeah.
I think what it is for me is that, like, for example, we use the language of saying something build, something decide,
yes.
X, Y, Z
yes.
thing. I think we as human beings, we're uncomfortable with the idea of a process being because I think all things are ultimately predictable when you understand the physical process behind it.
Yes.
But from our standpoint, unpredictable. Hence why I use the term of like a blind process.
Yes.
I think there are patterns that we can find within the physical processes that.
Who set the patterns?
Pardon?
If there's patterns, who set these patterns? For example, do you accept that there's laws in our universe?
Yeah, I said that we...
Okay, who set the laws? These are very important questions. If there is laws and patterns, who set the pattern, who set the law? If there is design, who set the design? These are very important questions, because the thing is, This is why we attribute these attributes to the necessary being, because it doesn't follow that there's a necessary being, he's independent, but the universe just popped into existence without his will. What kind of a necessary being is that? Because then that means there's an agent outside him that is making decisions and popping into existence. This is the reason why we say, for example, the DNA. The DNA is a program, right? It's information.
It's information, but that's what I'm saying. Like even this is why I think we have to be careful with the language we use.
Yeah.
We use analogies, right? Like when the rise of computers, we
Yeah.
try to computerize everything. So
Yeah.
brain to computer.
Yeah.
We used to say like DNA is like
Yeah.
bits and X, Y, and Z things
Yeah.
that give us a code. We're starting to learn that those analogies aren't always that helpful. Like for example, the brain is fundamentally different to a computer the way it operates. There's
Of
analogies
course,
with it,
it's more complex.
but there's cool.
Yeah.
So even when we talk about the physical universe, right?
Yeah.
Or this is, to me, is the universe, everything.
Yeah.
Cool. When we start to use words like law, the reason why we use words like those, because amongst human beings in our language, when we talk about order, we talk of it within
Yes.
laws and
Yes.
and things,
Yes.
because of our let's be real about the history of science. A lot of it does stem from theological thought and X, Y, and Z things. So that's
Exactly.
into the language.
Yes.
However, when you sometimes you have to decode what the language is in the sense of like when I say patterns,
Yeah.
I just literally mean things happen things happen seemingly to us randomly.
No,
because of,
there's no randomness.
no.
It's random to us.
I said seemingly
Themes,
to us. That's
yes.
what I'm saying, seemingly to us. But
Yes.
I think
Yes.
where the jump will come, where we have a difference is that someone positing the claim that somebody put the order there.
Something, yes, it has to, it follows.
I don't think that necessarily true.
Okay, how? So for example,
That's a positive claim.
okay, does the DNA have information?
Yes, it does have.
Okay, if there's information, it requires there to be, deduced from there is that it requires intelligence.
No, it's an intelligent process, yes.
No, 1 second. A book, does a book have information?
Yes, it does have.
Information, it requires that there is an intelligence behind it.
For a book?
For a book, yeah.
For the average book,
Yeah,
yes, all books.
a simple book. The most simplest book that says, hello, how are you? We will say that's information.
No, but I guess someone could put the hypothetical process of like someone can have a random. It's the same thing. The same way like someone talks about like the monkey type random.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Of like people,
Yes.
the monkeys could randomly type things.
They can,
without having-
that's an impossibility. Operationally, that's impossible. There is impossible for monkeys if you gave it infinite amount of time that they would write down Shakespeare. It's an impossibility. The factor that you're going with is if we give it enough time, this will happen. If I have an empty glass and I say give infinite time and we'll have a Ferrari, time is irrelevant to the equation because the elements to make a Ferrari is not in the cup. So the point I'm saying is, a book that is written has information. That means there was intelligence behind it. A DNA is much more complex than a mere book. And it has information in it. If there's information in it, it requires there to be intelligence. Am I right or wrong?
No, I'm not actually disagreeing with that.
Okay, but do you accept there's intelligence behind it?
I think there's intelligence within the process. I just don't.
Okay,
think,
okay, where
I think
did
the
that?
behind language is already implying that
Okay.
there's something. That
Yes,
that
but
control the-
I understand. But what we're doing is, like you said, we're going into words like.
But
very-
it's important.
No, it is important, but I'm using those words for us to come to basic conclusions. Otherwise, I can say the words that you're uttering mean nothing. What do you mean by it or how? What do you mean? If we go into that, it's just going to get really messy. What we're saying is, if there's information in DNA, it requires intelligence. You said there's intelligence in the process. Why is there intelligence in the process? Why did you say that? Why did you say no, there is no intelligence in the process? You said that because you know the basic, simple conclusion is if there's information, it requires intelligence. Now, the point I'm saying is the following. You have just given an attribute to the necessary being. It has to be all-knowing. It's intelligence. Because if it's giving rise to something which is its creation, which is dependent, DNA and our universe, then we require it to be all-knowing. We can't be like, oh, the bee knows when it flaps its wing, when the temperature in the hive gets hot, it starts flapping its wing this way, and then it flaps it the opposite way when it gets too cold. That is intelligence. If there is intelligence, there is an intelligent, a knowledge giver. So this is the reason why when you said about the attributes, why do you make God personify him? Because what we see is, it requires that. Just the way with dark matter, we cannot see, touch, smell, feel, or hear it, but we deduce that it exists. Why? Because I'm using the same argument. We have to give these attributes to God. Why? Because number one, the universe came to be. That requires a being that has a will to give rise to the universe. It's simple logic. And now, if that's the case, it has a will. Okay, acceptable. Then there's knowledge in the universe. Then it has to be the all-knowing. How can it give rise to something that it doesn't innately possess? So we say, then it has knowledge. It has to be all-knowing. Do you see how we now then start giving attributes to God Almighty? He has a will. He has to be the all-knowing. And there's other factors that we give him. This is why we personify it, because it necessitates that.
30 minutes.
Okay, we'll wrap up. But the point I'm trying to say is that there is strong evidence, and I thank you for your time and your sincerity. I really admire it. Thank you very much for your time. But it's a really, if you think about it, bro. What's your name? I forgot your name. Huh? Michael. If you think about it, Michael, obviously I don't know your personal experiences you went through, whatever it may be, but there is very, very strong evidence to God Almighty existing, and this is just one of it. There's many examples, argument from fine-tuning, argument from the Kalam Cosmos. This is just one argument that I've used. But if you think about it, bro, just as we look at a painting, even if I never ever saw the painter, I will know, wow, that's beautiful. Oh wow, look how he's, whatever it is, drawn that. I start giving attributes to the painter just by looking at his painting.
But
And
to me, I just think, to me, this is a kind of applying my own razor to
Yeah.
simple definitions.
Yeah.
To me, it seems more applicable for us anthropomizing that particular thing rather than saying the simpler thing. Because you're talking about the attribute of intelligence in systems,
Yes.
right? So to me, I just see that as, okay, cool. We have the same way like when we talk about the ecosystem. The ecosystem is just the amalgamation of all the
No, but there's order. The rain cycle, this is not randomness. These are things that are, these are laws.
I hear you, but I think
Because otherwise you can never do science. For example, we have regularity, uniformity. Otherwise we can never do science. Because imagine if we was going to do an experiment and something just popped and it's irregular, you can never even do science.
no, but science is not mutually exclusive to randomness, though, because randomness in science.
There is no randomness. If you're a scientist, you don't believe in randomness or chances.
No, but what I'm saying is randomness in scientific terms only just means unpredictable.
No, not really. If you know all the, for example, if I flip a coin to a scientist and I say heads or tails, if he knew the angle I'm flipping it at, and if he knew all the factors around it, he would know exactly what there is no such thing as chance. So he would know the exact results once he knows all the factors pertaining to it. Therefore, chance doesn't even exist. You're a hard determinist. You'll be a hard determinist.
Yeah, so-
exactly. So if you're a hard determinist, then who's the determiner? Because if you're a hard determinist, that means that if you go back to the end, there is someone that determined it all. You can't be a hard determinist and say everything has exactly been willed. Okay, but who said this? Who said this law?
I think a lot of we have a lot of common ground on certain
Yes, we
things,
do.
but I think my reluctance is this argument of anthropomorphism, and you don't think that's an argument.
No. We don't believe God is a man. We do not believe that God is composed of pieces. We
I'm
don't.
not saying that you're saying that, but even smaller aspects of like a determinator.
But it follows just the way dark matter. We follow it by not seeing it, and we deduce that. I'm just doing the same thing by saying it necessitates these stuff. My God, it's a pleasure, man. I really enjoyed it. Come see me Sundays. I'm here every time. But you're a sincere person, man. I would say, look, just pray. Just say, look, you know what, God? If you're there, show me a sign. Just guide me. You got nothing to do. Just try it. I did this about 13 years ago.
I mean, I grew up to this. I've done the praying thing.
Try to Him, God Almighty. If you are there, if there is a true religion, can you please guide me? If you're sincere, bro, God's gonna guide you. I promise you.
I definitely hear you, bro. I definitely
Try
hear
it. You got nothing to lose.
Well, I guess that's the was it Pascal's way?
Yeah. No, I'm just saying. I'm not saying accept a religion. I'm just saying the prayer.
No, even the spiritual process
Yeah.
of praying and all them type of things there. For me, I see like, for example, someone praying and having, using their time to focus on a particular aspect of their life.
Yeah.
To me, it's like another form of mindfulness. To me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I would say try by yourself too. I can't really force
I
you.
hear you.
Thank you, Mike.
It's my first time here.
Nice, good man. You need to come more regular.
Yeah, I'll come through.
Thank you, Mike. Take care. Look after yourself. Take care. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike.
Summarize.
Thank you, guys. It was very interesting. I mean, it's very sincere. I really like speaking to sincere people. And yeah, look, we had our differences. It was thought-provoking. And, we learn from each other. And I think, there's some things that he's going to be thinking about, inshallah. So until next time, from Salam Kona, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Mr. Dawah, how come every time I talk...
Every time I'm in trouble.
Benim bizimkini ver bana bizim.
Bu benim. Go on that. That's mine.
Kimin?
Yeah, sure.
Kimin?
On the camera.
Ha bizim.
Guys, I'm not in charge of the mics no more. What happened? I was in charge of the mics, yeah? That's how the lens dropped.
Why give me all?
Because I'm not in charge no more.
Here you are. Habibi, no picture. Where's that? What's going on? Oh my god. Where's that one?
What's all this?
Yeah, Dawah. Videos. Oi. Kim, where's Sam? Ali.